Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video, and my throat is still a little bit hoarse. I'm going to try to get through this without too much coughing, and I hope my voice holds up throughout the length of the video. But today I plan on talking about a fragrance very kindly sent to me by Nikki, and thank you for commenting and saying that you were the one that sent me these samples, because when I reviewed Eris Night Flower, I actually forgot who it was. So thank you. I'm going to do a fresh spray while we chatter along a little bit, because I really like this fragrance, but it doesn't last too long on me. But I really like, if I could just have a bottle and reapply every 3 or 4 hours, it would be absolute heaven. Oh, it's a beautiful fragrance. So, but before we talk about Eris Parfums Mxxx, which is a extrait de parfum, doesn't wear like an extrait, but it's an extrait de parfum that is a limited edition according to the Eris Parfum website. Although it did come out in 2019 and it's still on there, so I don't know how limited edition it is, but that's what they say. We are going to do, well, let's do scent of the day first, because this is a fragrance I wish got more talk on YouTube. I'm going to review this one of these days, but this is a discontinued flanker of Lolita Lampica's Eau Masculine. I think I like this even more than the original. This is Eau Masculine Eau de Parfum Intense. Sorry about the tester down there, but this was a tester bottle. And so this is the Eau de Parfum Intense from 2015, discontinued just like the OG. From, I believe, the year 2000, but this is maybe one of the best black licorice fragrances I've ever smelled. And you may be thinking, Ramsey, I hate black licorice. And you know what? I'm not the biggest fan either, but there is just something so beautiful about this. Anique Minardo perfumed this. She's the one who signed it, created it, and this is amazing. There's iris, there's star anise, which is a big player in the original as well, but they've added an oud note, vetiver, bergamot, and myrrh. And it's just, I wore it today. It's just beautiful as my scent of the day. That black licorice, star anise, spicy sweet combination, but it's less sweet than the original. I think this is an absolute hit that just got kind of pushed aside. Great designer perfume. Sad it's discontinued. Okay, so before we do this review of Mxxx, which is beautiful, we are going to do a quick unboxing, because my good friend Prakhar Gupta from the house of Sherwood, if you've been following my channel, you know that I've reviewed a couple of his scents. I reviewed Gentleman, I reviewed Sar, which is probably my favorite from his line so far that I've tried, and I reviewed Vetiver Royale, I believe it was called. Maybe one of the best vetivers that I don't have in my collection. And so he recently released a new fragrance that he wanted me to try, and so he very kindly sent this to me. And like I always say with all of the, anytime anyone sends me a bottle, I always tell them that send it to me, but all opinions are my own, right? I'm going to say whatever I want, whatever I feel is true, good, bad, or indifferent. So this is a limited edition fragrance that he put out, and it's called Ambrosia, which I think is kind of a cool name. And this actually is a limited edition. I think there's only like 100 bottles made for the whole world or something like that. I can't, because it's very expensive to make, because this is a fragrance that, instead of using perfumer's alcohol, uses ambergris tincture, but in even larger doses than Mxxx. I think Mxxx is tinctured at like 7% of the formula. I think he said this is something like 50%. So let's open this bad boy up. Let's see what we have here. I'm pretty sure it's Ambrosia, but let's open it up and see. Good old Sherwood. I like their packaging for sure. And there it is. So there's their packaging, and here's the bottle. Ah, very cool. So there you go. Actually, there's 50 of them for the world, so there you go. And he signed the back, which is awesome. Great touch. Beautiful. Look at that juice color. So Ambrosia, wow. Ambrosia is a amber oud ambergris fragrance that has just a bucket load of notes. Amalfi lemon, Bulgarian lavender, Calabrian bergamot, castoreum, clary sage, mandarin orange, May rose, ambergris, birch tar, bourbon vanilla, Bulgarian rose, carnation, choy ral, East Indian oud, French iris, jasmine sambac, Madagascan ylang ylang, orange blossom absolute, sandalwood, Assam oud, castoreum absolute, damask rose, Indian vetiver, Indonesian patchouli, oak moss absolute, orris absolute, Spanish labdanum styrax, and tobacco absolute. So, yes, you can see it's a pure parfum, and I cannot wait to wear this. I very well may bring this to the office tomorrow and wear it to work. Smells amazing from the atomizer, even though it's never been sprayed. I can literally smell it. Cannot wait to get to know this one. This one I'm very excited about, and I hear it's a little bit of a shapeshifter. And for I think it's $300 for this. I want to say this is 50 mil, but I'm not 100% sure. But I think it's 50 mils for $300, which sounds expensive. But one thing about Sherwood, and if you've watched my other Sherwood videos, you'll know that it's a house that I really think you get a high value for money for, because it feels like, you know, this house feels like, it feels like you're getting in on the ground floor of like Russian Adam when he was doing Areej Dore's first, second collection, the early stuff. That's what it feels like with the House of Sherwood to me. I really feel like bang for the buck for what you get. Like, if this is actually 50% tinctured ambergris as perfumer's alcohol, let's say, how the price is even $300 is unbelievable. I mean, Ensar Oud, when he does his ambergris tincture in the pure parfums, I think he sells them for $1,000, or some of them are even more than that. So, yes, I mean, it's expensive, obviously. It's limited. There's only 50 bottles made. But I am very excited to get to know that. So thank you, Prakhar. Very, very kind gift. And I will probably wear that as my scent of the day tomorrow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Mxxx, which again came out in 2019. And it is perfumed by the great Antoine Lie, who I honestly think is probably one of the best perfumers currently perfuming. Okay, so take out the folks who have retired, right? As far as modern perfumers go, who are still active and at the height of his powers, Antoine Lie is, I think, one of the best out there for what he does. And he's also somebody that just kind of went against the grain. You know, he gave the perfume industry as a whole the middle finger and just went and did his own thing. And I really respect him for that. And so Mxxx is labeled as a spicy animalic scent. And what's interesting is I've heard people describe this scent before, and so I was bracing for something that was like disgustingly animalic. Mxxx is not that at all. In fact, there was an original fragrance came out that was called MX, which the quote from Antoine Lie says, "If the X in Eris Parfums gender fluid fragrance MX marked the freedom to be who you want to be, the triple X of Mxxx, Extrait de Parfum, extends that invitation with the lights turned down low and the animalic growl turned up." That was a quote from Barbara Herman, the founder and creative director of Eris Parfums. So this fragrance basically opens up spicy and slightly aromatic, okay, in the opening. And it feels like there's a lot of space in the fragrance when you first spray. It's not heavy. It's not super animalic. It's not ultra challenging or anything like that. Not at all. There is something in the background that smells like you're smelling something that reminded me of a burnt offering. I don't know why that came to my mind, but this burnt offering came to mind. And, you know, I'm imagining like making an offering at church back in the old days and lighting a candle, you know, or something like that. There's this burnt offering feeling to this. And but it's also, it's really a fragrance of contrast, because you're going to get a lot of fresher spices in the opening. So you're going to get ginger, and the ginger used here is Madagascan blue ginger, which I couldn't pick that out from regular ginger, but the ingredients here smell absolutely high quality, high class ingredients. So you're going to get ginger and you're going to get mace. And it just kind of adds this peppery, there's like this peppery aromatic smell to the opening. There is saffron, but it's nothing like the saffron that you're going to smell in like a Middle Eastern fragrance. Don't think big, bold, heavy, chemical smelling saffron. Not at all. And that Ethiopian frankincense is probably where that burnt offering image came to my mind. But there's this, along with that, there's this very delicate freshness, almost like, you know what it reminds me of? You know what I was thinking as I was wearing this? The delicacy of the opening is almost complete 180 to what I was expecting. I was expecting some big, bold, animalic, super challenging fragrance. And the opening is almost this delicate, almost like if you look at it, the fresh mirage of that image will just implode, right? Like it'll just go away. Like you can see it out of the corner of your eye, but if you look at it, it implodes, right? That's how the freshness of this fragrance feels. It feels like it's kind of there, but you have to look out of the periphery of your eye because there's a shyness to this. You know, there's a lot of space here, and so there's a lot of space for the fresh notes to run away if you look directly at it, right? And the interesting part for me is the ingredients used. So I don't know if I shared this with you whenever I reviewed Eris's Night Flower, but in Night Flower, the ingredients smelled so high quality, and somebody left a comment saying that Eris uses the same material house that Les Abstraits use, right? So this is La Dore Exquise and Descendres, which I've reviewed on the channel. I've also reviewed Belle Ame, which I don't have a bottle. I'd love a bottle, but Belle Ame is probably much closer to what MXXX is than either of those two. But they use the same perfume house, which is L'Atelier Francois de Maitries, which is basically the French atelier of materials, right? It's Remy's house. If you've ever watched those ingredient episodes with Papa Pete Persolays, Remy is the one who gets on there and talks about the ingredients with Persolays. And he runs and owns with his wife this French atelier material house. And they have some very interesting ultrasound tinctures and stuff like that. So the materials that come out of that are extremely high class. And so Les Indemodables, which is their brand, they use their materials. Les Abstraits, which I just showed you, Eugene's brand uses it, and also Eris. So Eris is kind of the third house for me getting to know this material house. And it's interesting because as a frag head, as someone who absolutely loves fragrances, the fact that I've gone all this time and never smelled any Eris offerings is absolutely crazy to me. And so this fragrance, you know, they basically, the word Barbara Herman used is that there's a growl to it, right? And there is something that I would describe as an animalic growl in the background, right? But it's not a, you know, maybe the growl can turn to like a grumble or a gurgle, but it's definitely not a scream. It's not a roar. This fragrance doesn't roar. Don't think of a lion's roar. Don't think of a big, giant, bold, animalic fragrance. That's not at all. It's really more of a, like she said, a growl, or you could even say a gurgle. It is focused around this ambergris note. And so what's very hard to describe with ambergris is that many times when you're smelling ambergris, and she talks a little bit about it in the blurb. Let me read you the blurb from the house of Eris. By the way, here's something I didn't know, but Eris Parfums is actually named after the Greek goddess of troublemaking and disruption, which is a great name for a house like Eris that goes against the grain, right? Continues its celebration of unconventional beauty and subversive glamour with its new limited edition fragrance, MXXX. I'd love to know how limited this limited edition actually is, because it's been around since 2019. Spicy, smoky, animalic, and woody, MXXX has a massive 7% overdose of natural, specifically tinctured and ethically sourced ambergris. And it says that due to its rarity, is found often in synthetic perfumes listing it as an ingredient. But here they're actually using the real thing, of course. It can be sweet, earthy, marine-like, animalic, and natural ambergris imparts this subtle but unmistakable glow to an elixir it joins. I've often described ambergris and other fragrances that I've smelled like having a spotlight. So ambergris is like taking a spotlight and shining it on the other materials. Like it literally makes them, it makes them glow, like she said in her write-up. But ambergris isn't a note that you're going to smell a lot of times and go, yep, that's ambergris. No, it doesn't work that way. It's very subtle, and many times ambergris is used as like a base, as a fixative. You know, in the old days, they used it as a fixative because it has a material in it called ambrine. And ambrine is one of the materials that does well at fixing fragrance or to, you know, to your skin, basically. So it just adds this roundness, this coziness, as they say, this warmth on her website. And it's interesting because if you've been following the channel, okay, there's actually a couple real ambergris fragrances that I have reviewed on the channel. You can go back through my old playlist and try to check those out. One is Ambre Supreme, which is also an Antoine Lie creation, Ambre Supreme. And the other is Atlantic Ambergris by Areej Dore, and I've reviewed this first version, and there's a part 2. I've reviewed both on the channel. They're both so close, to be honest with you, that I wouldn't bother paying bigger money for the older one, or I would just get whatever you can get if this is a fragrance you're interested in. Areej Dore is fast becoming one of my most favorite houses. These type of houses, you know, Areej Dore, stuff like Sherwood, these niche houses like Les Indemodables, Eris, you know, that's the stuff that I really itch to wear a lot of times. It's very hard for me to go back and wear some designer fragrances. You know, sometimes you just want to wear something that has real ingredients listed. And real ambergris is such a pleasure and a joy to wear. But if you've been following the channel, you'll know that that basically this is a very spicy, heavy. The spices are out of this world on Atlantic Ambergris. You get a ton of nutmeg and stuff like that. It's interesting that Eris Parfums Mxxx uses mace because mace is a almost like a, it's an ingredient that basically comes from nutmeg, if you will. And so here they decide to use mace, but it kind of falls in between Atlantic Ambergris's heavy heft and the softness of Ambre Supreme. Ambre Supreme is like water sparkling off of the ocean. I mean, it's like there's this glistening feel to it, and it's very fresh. It's slightly floral, but it's the best way to describe it is just imagine beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky, and every you know, cut of the wave, every, you know, crash of the water coming together, you just see a different shape of the light glistening off of the ocean in your eye. That is Ambre Supreme to me. It's beautiful. It's stunning. The ambergris note in here is out of this world. And so for me, MXXX kind of has a little bit of the warmth of the spices in Atlantic Ambergris, but of course, Areej Dore loves bold, daring, heavy fragrances that are heavy on the nose. I do too. And so MXXX falls sort of a little in the category of Atlantic Ambergris, but nowhere near as heavy or as spicy. You know, it wears like a lighter version. So it wears much more like Ambre Supreme, but it has notes that kind of fall closer to this category, if that makes sense. And so it's very interesting because what you'll smell in MXXX is sort of a animalic note that feels like you're smelling a mixture of like a white and a brown ambergris is kind of what I've decided on, right? So it smells like because brown ambergris hasn't had as much time to sit in the sun and soak up the water, soak up the sunlight, you know, take on more of that oceanic feel. It's rawer. It has like a more of an animalic feel to it. And black ambergris is the most animalic. And that is, you know, basically fresh out of the sperm whale, if you will. So the whiter it is, the more airy and the more sparkly of a vibe that it gives off here, I think because of the mixture of the hyrax, which they call Pierre d'Afrique, which is also known as African stone or hyraceum, they use in very subliminal small doses. Anything more than just a touch of hyrax is too much, because it's literally mummified poop of the hyrax is what hyraceum is. But it adds an animalic aspect to the fragrance as well. And so I think when you smell MXXX, you kind of, so you get an animalic note that just gives off, to my nose, a little bit of an ashy quality. It's strange because in the beginning I said there was something like a burnt offering, right? So here, as you're smelling it, as it continues to dry down, I just sprayed this on when I started the video 20 minutes ago, and already I'm getting that slightly sweet, musky, nutty, ashy quality. And it really has this fresh skin-like smell. There's almost something that smells like skin, like human skin, you know, skin that's maybe been outside, that has had sweat on it. The sweat has dried, you know, and it's become slightly salty. There's a little bit of that in there for sure. And the fragrance continues to evolve. There are definite changes in here. One of the big similarities to another Antoine Lie creation, created by the same fragrance house, L'Atelier Francois Demetrius. I need an easier name for them. We're just going to say L'Atelier from now on. But the material house where they get these ingredients from, there is a cacao note, okay? There's a cacao note in MXXX. And the cacao note here smells slightly powdery, okay? It doesn't have the... Let me put a cough drop in so I don't cough in your ear. But it doesn't have the sort of bitter, harsh quality of the cacao in Vanille Havane, which I actually wore as my New Year's Day scent just yesterday. Excuse me. And so you definitely get this high quality cacao note that gives you just a array of this chocolatey dark without being too bitter, if that makes sense. The cacao note, the way it's used is softer in texture, much closer to the way that the cacao is used in Belle Ame, which I actually have a review of Belle Ame on the channel if you want to check that out. But it's deep and rich, and yet it's ethereal. And so it's almost like, you know what it feels like? There's this, the powderiness of the cacao feels cloud-like, right? There's almost something that has this cloud-like texture to it. Like, imagine powdery, chocolatey clouds, right? And that's kind of how the fragrance wears. It wears ethereal and cloud-like. And what I was thinking as I was wearing it is, of course, it has some of the Ambergris from Ambre Supreme. It feels very similar. But it also has some of the sort of spices from Atlantic Ambergris, but nowhere near as heavy. And then it has some of the cacao from other fragrances by that same ingredient house, L'Atelier. And when you put it all together, it's almost like the ambergris from the sea has evaporated, and the clouds overhead are kind of that chocolatey cacao. And it's almost like it's all part of the same ecosystem, if that makes sense. But this is kind of its own little creation. I actually really like it. I enjoy it. The problem is 50 mils for $240. I don't think I would pay that. I don't like it that much to where I would pay that kind of money, even if I was buying fragrances right now, which I'm not. But if you want an example of a ambergris fragrance, if that makes sense, you could definitely check this one out. My guess is you'll also be able to check out this Sherwood Ambrosia, which again, is a very limited, a true limited edition. You can see the bottles were numbered. But, you know, if you're someone who is interested in exploring that ambergris note, that very sparkly, ethereal, diffusive, sort of, you know, skin-like, sweaty skin-like texture, definitely put MXXX on the list. But no, it's nowhere near as animalic as some of the other reviewers make it seem, or some of the rumors going around in Fragcom. It's a very high quality. Yes, it's technically an animalic fragrance because of the ambergris, but it's a very complex, I think, lovely perfume. It's just a, you know, you have to like fragrances that wear a little light, and, you know, you have to sort of pay attention. This is not heavy on the nose. If you prefer that heavy on the nose ambergris, which, to be honest, I do, I would urge you to go for Atlantic Ambergris by Areej Dore. Or we'll see what I think about Ambrosia as well. But those kind of ambergris fragrances are probably going to appeal more to somebody who doesn't want the ambergris that's light and airy and ethereal. They want it heavy. They want a heavier punch. You know, they want the ambergris to really punch you in the face, and they want it to be more animalic. You know, this wears very cloud-like. That's the best way to describe MXXX to me. Very sensual fragrance, as she says. Very dark, sensual, but it wears in an ethereal... There's a lot of dark notes, but it wears in this, you know, very ethereal, light, airy, salty, skin-like vibe. But I like it. I enjoy it. Thank you, Nikki, for sending me the sample. Thanks for watching the unboxing. I can't wait to wear this. Thank you, Prakhar, for sending this along. If you have experience with MXXX, I'd love to know your thoughts. Do leave a comment. Let me know what you think of Eris and that, you know, lab, the perfumery lab, L'Atelier Francois. Let me know what you think of their ingredients as well. I think they supply some of the best ingredients to these type of perfumes for sure. Hands down, in my opinion. Their materials are really top notch. So thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.